The phone call came in on a warm August afternoon in 2005, and the dispatcher who answered it had no idea she was about to become part of one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in New York State history. A woman named Stacey Castor was on the line, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine panic. Her husband David had locked himself in their bedroom the day before. He had been drinking heavily, she said. He had been depressed, moody, impossible to reason with. She had gone to work that morning at the family business and had called home repeatedly, but nobody answered. She thought he was just sleeping it off, but by 2 in the afternoon she still could not reach him. That was when she panicked. That was when she asked deputies to meet her at her home on Wetzel Road in the town of Clay, just outside Syracuse, New York. The officers who arrived found Stacey Castor waiting outside, visibly distraught and crying. She told them there was a shotgun under the bed, and she had not heard from David for hours. The deputies wasted no time getting inside. What they found in that bedroom would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel a decade of lies, expose a pattern of murder that had gone undetected for years, and ultimately reveal that the grieving widow standing outside was not a victim of tragedy, but a cold-blooded killer who had been getting away with murder for far too long. And the most terrifying part of all was that she was just getting started. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The bedroom was exactly as Stacey had described it. David Castor lay dead on the bed, his body still. On the nightstand beside him sat 2 glasses. One was clean, pristine, half full of what appeared to be antifreeze. The other had some kind of brown residue at the bottom, smudged and mucked up as if someone had been drinking from it while sick. Nearby investigators found an antifreeze container, a bottle of apricot brandy, and a bottle of cranberry juice. There was also an empty bottle of the sleep medication Ambien. On the surface, it looked like an open and shut case of suicide. A depressed man in a failing business, grieving the recent death of his father, had gotten drunk and decided to end his life with antifreeze and sleeping pills. But the detectives on scene kept their minds open. They collected every piece of evidence they could find, knowing that in the beginning you treat a suicide as if it is a suicide, but you always remain open to the possibility that something else is going on. And something else was definitely going on. The preliminary autopsy results came back with a bombshell that nobody saw coming. David Castor had no alcohol in his system. None. 0. And he had no Ambien in his system either. How could a man who had supposedly been drinking excessively all weekend have absolutely no alcohol in his blood? How could an empty bottle of Ambien with 30 pills missing leave no trace of the drug in his body? The questions started piling up faster than the answers could come. Then investigators found the turkey baster. It was sitting on top of the kitchen trash can, clean and in good shape, almost like it was brand new, like nobody had ever cooked with it. When they tested it, they found David Castor's DNA on the tip and traces of ethylene glycol, the main ingredient in antifreeze, inside the baster itself. But there were no fingerprints on the baster at all. Someone had wiped it clean. That made absolutely no sense. If David had used the baster to squirt antifreeze down his own throat in a moment of despair, why would he bother to leave the bedroom, walk to the kitchen, throw the baster in the trash, and wipe his fingerprints off it? Suicidal people do not worry about leaving evidence behind. Murderers do. And the timeline of antifreeze poisoning told an even more damning story. Ingesting ethylene glycol does not kill quickly. It is a slow, agonizing death that can take days. The victim appears drunk, stumbling, confused, as the poison metabolizes into deadly toxins that slowly shut down the organs. David Castor had to have ingested the antifreeze on Friday, at the beginning of the weekend, not on Sunday or Monday, when Stacey claimed he had locked himself in the room. That meant someone had been poisoning him slowly over the course of 4 days, while he lay helpless in that bed. And the only person who had consistent access to him during that time was his wife. Stacey Castor had told everyone who would listen that her husband was a heavy drinker, that he had been on a bender all weekend, that he was belligerent and out of control. But the toxicology report proved that was a lie. There was no alcohol in his system. There was no Ambien. The only thing in his body was antifreeze, and lots of it. The picture that began to emerge was horrifying. Someone had waited until David was incapacitated, probably sedated with something, and then used that turkey baster to force the poison down his throat over and over again throughout that long weekend. It was a methodical, calculated, and utterly cold-blooded way to kill another human being. And the person who did it had staged the entire scene to look like a suicide, complete with the glasses, the bottles, and the carefully crafted story about a depressed man who had lost his will to live. But the story did not hold up under scrutiny. The glass containing the antifreeze had David's DNA on the rim, but no fingerprints at all. The apricot brandy bottle had only Stacey's fingerprints on it. David's prints were nowhere to be found. When detectives questioned Stacey about this, she claimed she had never touched that bottle, had never poured brandy for David or anyone else. Her story was falling apart piece by piece. Then investigators made a discovery that changed everything. Stacey Castor had been married before. Her first husband was a man named Michael Wallace, the father of her two daughters Ashley and Bree. Michael had died in January 2000 at just 38 years old. The official cause of death was a heart attack. His family had begged Stacey to consent to an autopsy, but she refused, telling them that Michael had been a drug abuser with a bad heart, and that she was not surprised at all that he had passed away. But when detectives looked into Michael Wallace's medical records, they found something shocking. The worst thing he had ever had was a hernia. He was a healthy 38-year-old man who had simply laid down on his couch one day and never woke up. That did not sound like a heart attack. That sounded like something else entirely. And the more detectives dug, the more they realized they were looking at a pattern. Two husbands, both dead young, both dying under suspicious circumstances. Both leaving behind a wife who stood to benefit financially from their deaths. It was a nightmare straight out of a true crime novel, except this was real, and the woman at the center of it all was still walking free. Detectives obtained a court order to exhume Michael Wallace's body. It was not a decision they took lightly. Exhuming a body is intrusive, painful for the family, and emotionally devastating for everyone involved. But they had to know the truth. When the medical examiner opened Michael Wallace's grave and examined his remains, the results came back within days. His body was full of crystallization. Ethylene glycol crystals had formed in his organs, and they had never gone away. Michael Wallace had not died of a heart attack. He had been poisoned with antifreeze, exactly like David Castor. Two husbands, both killed with the same poison, both buried right next to each other in the same cemetery. The detective on the case later said that at that moment he knew they had a double homicide and that Stacey Castor had probably killed both of her husbands. But the evidence was still circumstantial. They needed more. They needed something that would tie her directly to the murders. And that something was about to walk right into their hands in the most unexpected way possible. In September 2007, just days after investigators exhumed Michael Wallace's body and confirmed he had been poisoned, Stacey Castor's daughter Ashley Wallace was rushed to the hospital. She was found unconscious by her younger sister Bree, barely breathing, her heart racing dangerously fast. The doctors had no idea what she had taken. Next to her body, they found a typed suicide note. In the note, Ashley confessed to killing both her father Michael Wallace and her stepfather David Castor with antifreeze and rat poison. It was a stunning development that seemed to solve the entire case. The killer was not the grieving widow after all. It was her own daughter, a troubled young woman who had finally confessed and tried to take her own life. But something about the note did not feel right to the detectives who had been working the case for 2 years. They looked at the wording, the phrasing, the specific details, and then they noticed something that made their blood run cold. The note used the word antifreeze without the Z at the end. That was the exact same mistake Stacey Castor had made during an interrogation months earlier when she accidentally said antifreeze instead of cranberry juice. She had caught herself immediately and tried to correct it, but the word had already escaped her lips. Now here it was again, in a suicide note supposedly written by her daughter. That was not a coincidence. That was a signature. The forensic analysis of the suicide note revealed even more damning evidence. The note had been typed on the family computer, and when investigators examined the hard drive, they found multiple drafts that had been deleted. They were able to recover snippets of those drafts with date and timestamps. Comparing those timestamps to who was home at the time, they discovered that Ashley had been at school or work during those periods. Stacey Castor had been the only one home. And in one of the wiretapped phone calls detectives had placed on the family line, they could hear the sound of typing in the background while Stacey was on the phone. At that exact moment, Ashley was not in the residence. She was at school. The suicide note was a forgery, a desperate attempt by a mother to frame her own daughter for 2 murders she herself had committed. But the worst part was yet to come. Ashley Wallace had not tried to kill herself. Her mother had tried to kill her. Stacey had made Ashley a birthday cocktail on Friday night, the first time she had ever made her daughter an alcoholic drink. Inside that drink were crushed pills, a lethal dose of painkillers and sleeping medication. Over the next 17 hours, Stacey fed her daughter more pills mixed with soda, juice, and vodka while Ashley lay unconscious and dying in her bed. When Ashley finally woke up in the hospital, she had no idea what had happened. She had no memory of writing a suicide note because she had never written one. Her own mother had tried to kill her and then frame her for murder. The trial of Stacey Castor began in January 2009 and lasted 4 weeks. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: the turkey baster with David's DNA and antifreeze traces, the forged suicide note with Stacey's fingerprints, and her unique misspelling of antifreeze, the exhumation results showing Michael Wallace's body loaded with antifreeze crystals, the wiretap recordings, the computer forensics, the testimony of Ashley and Bree, who bravely took the stand against their own mother. Throughout it all, Stacey Castor sat stone-faced, showing no emotion whatsoever. She did not cry. She did not show remorse. She simply stared downward and refused to acknowledge the devastation she had caused. The jury of 10 women and 2 men deliberated for 16 hours over 4 days before reaching their verdict. On February 5, 2009, Stacey Castor was found guilty of second-degree murder for killing David Castor, attempted second-degree murder for trying to kill her daughter Ashley, and forgery for falsifying her husband's will. The judge called her crimes the most reprehensible he had ever seen in 34 years on the bench. He said he had never seen a parent willing to sacrifice their own child to shift the blame away from themselves. He sentenced her to 51 1/3 years in prison, ensuring she would never walk free again. When Ashley Wallace addressed the court at sentencing, she spoke words that cut through the courtroom like a knife. She said she hated her mother for ruining so many lives. She said she did not even know why her mother did it, what gave her the right to play God with people. She said she had never known what hate was until now. And then she said the most heartbreaking thing of all. She said she still loved her mother at the same time. It bothered her. It was so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time? She just wished her mother would say she was sorry for everything she did, including all the lies. But Stacey Castor never apologized. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she simply replied, "No, sir." She maintained her innocence until the very end, insisting that Ashley was the real killer and that she had been wrongly convicted. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and the judge had no doubt about her guilt. She died in prison in June 2016 at the age of 48 from a heart attack. She never admitted what she had done. She never gave her daughters the closure they deserved. She took her secrets to the grave. What drove Stacey Castor to commit such unspeakable acts? The answer, according to prosecutors, was simple: greed. She killed her husbands to collect their life insurance policies and inherit their estates. After Michael Wallace died, she collected a $55,000 insurance policy. After David Castor died, she stood to inherit everything. But there was a problem. David had a will that left everything to his son from a previous marriage. So Stacey forged a new will, one that left everything to her. When investigators examined the forged document, they found that the signature was shaky, traced, clearly not David's handwriting. She had even buried both of her husbands in adjoining plots in the same cemetery, a macabre display of control that continued even after death. She wanted them close to her, close to each other, close to the woman who had taken their lives. It was a level of coldness that seasoned detectives said they had never seen before in their entire careers. The story of Stacey Castor is a cautionary tale about the darkness that can lurk behind a seemingly ordinary facade. She was a wife, a mother, a business owner, a member of the community. Nobody suspected her. Nobody saw her coming. She moved through the world with a smile on her face while secretly plotting the deaths of the people closest to her. She poisoned her first husband and got away with it for 7 years. She poisoned her second husband and almost got away with that too. And when the walls started closing in, she tried to kill her own daughter and frame her for both murders. She would have succeeded if not for a single slip of the tongue, a turkey baster in the trash, and a team of detectives who refused to accept the easy answer. The case made national headlines, spawned documentaries and true crime books, and earned Stacey Castor the nickname the Black Widow. But for her daughters Ashley and Bree, she was simply the woman who took everything from them. Their father, their stepfather, their childhood, their sense of safety, their ability to trust. All of it gone because one woman decided that money and freedom were worth more than the lives of the people who loved her. And here is the question that still haunts everyone who followed this case. If Stacey Castor had never made that one mistake, if she had never said antifreeze instead of cranberry juice, do you think she would have gotten away with both murders and gone on to kill again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear what you think.